What we'll do next is we're going to do the second one, and we're going to learn something new, and that's this famous brush. So let's start with our background. Now, if I wanted to work on Artboard 5, as it says here, I can just click on it with the Move tool, and it will automatically be highlighted here. Now, what I'm going to do is close Artboard 4 just so it's less messy for now, and I'm just going to expand Artboard 5 so the arrow faces downwards, so I'll be able to view the layers that I'm going to place in. Okay, so we'll start with the background. When I start creating graphics in Photoshop, I always start with the bottom layer or the back layer, and I work my layers up. So the back layer here is the background, and I need to go to the rectangle tool, and again, you either go to the fill, or if that color is here, you can just click on it. If it's not there, you can click on the fill, click on the color picker, and just use the eyedropper to click, and okay. And now we can start drawing our rectangle. Click and drag. Super. And we always go back to the Move tool. Just get in the habit of doing that and everything will be a lot smoother for you. Right, let's do the second rectangle now. So we're gonna go to the rectangle tool and we're going to draw another rectangle. Click and drag. If you look at your layers right now, you'll have two of the same layers. Now we need to make this rectangle white. As you can see, this is white, but it doesn't have a fill, so we need to make the fill no fill and the border white, just like in this one. So we go to the fill and we remove the fill. We go to the stroke and we make this white. And of course we have to resize, make it wider so we can actually see it. And there we go, it's starting to show. Super. Now obviously we need to resize this. So we go back to the Move tool and edit, free transform. Very important. Then you can use Alt or Option and drag it inwards. And voila. And always go back to the Move tool whenever you're done with something. Super. Now are you ready to learn something new? This brush. I love using brushes. There's so much you can do. You can paint in Photoshop, which I do as well. Now, in terms of layers for brushes, you need to create a new layer for a brush. If you don't, it will kind of destroy your other layers. So you need to create a new layer. And the way to do this is to look at the layers panel at the bottom, next to the trash, or in the UK we say bin. You'll see an icon. If you're using the latest version of Photoshop, it will say plus. An older version will be a little square with a folded corner. And if you click on that, you will see a new layer, an empty layer. Now we're going to go to the brush tool. And the brush tool is over here. And the shortcut is B. B for brush. Very easy. And we're also going to bring up the brushes panel. So if you're ever looking for a panel, and this is in all Adobe software, you always need to go to Window, because Window is where all the panels live. And if you select brushes, you can look at a whole bunch of brushes over here. You'll probably see something like this, and you'll probably see general brushes. Now, let me show you a couple of these. So if you look at soft round, let's say, and you look at the size, so you can change the brush size. So if I make this bigger, my brush size will be bigger, which is very cool. But let me give you a shortcut which will make everything go much faster. So to increase the brush size, it's the right square bracket. And if you do that, your brush size will get bigger. And the left square bracket, making it smaller. And now we're just gonna play with it, and you can just go click and drag. And that's one type of brush, although it's not the one we need, so you can just edit, undo. Let's try hard round. and then edit, undo. And now let's look at some really cool, really fun ones. So if you look at dry media brushes and wet media brushes, you have things like ink and gouache and special effects. Now, if you do not see these brushes, what you could do is you can either go to the Adobe website and type in Kyle Webster brushes. It's a guy who created these really cool brushes that allows you to paint. Or you can just Google download Kyle Webster brushes for free, which is what I did. And you have loads of them. You have gouache. Now the one we'll be using is Kyle Ultimate Charcoal, which is here under dry media brushes. But obviously you can use any type of brush you like. And again, we can use the shortcut to resize this brush, the right square bracket or left square bracket. And now before you go for it, just make sure that your color is white. The fill is white, and you can go for it and click and drag. Sometimes it's a little bit slow, but how fun is this? Great, huh? And now we're going to do the rest of the image very quickly. Go back to the shape tool, select the custom shape tool, look at the top and choose this flower this time, shape 47, and maybe give it another color so it's easier to differentiate. Hold down the shift key and draw it in. Now let's paste the image, file, place embedded. And which image was it? Oh yes, the tattoo girl again. And click on place and resize. Now make sure that your image isn't smaller than your shape. You want your image to be a bit bigger so you don't have these gaps. And now you hold down the Alt key until you see the square and the arrow and you click. And there it is. Now always go back to the Move tool, and then you would be able to move it if you wanted to. Now I trust that you can do the rest, and I would like you to recreate this one on your own. We're gonna go ahead and go to the final one over here, and that's what we'll be recreating, which is really exciting because it has both a brush and a clipping mask. And it looks really cool, I think. So let's make sure we close the previous artboard so we don't see it. And let's make sure that we click with the Move tool on artboard 8. There it is. And we're going to expand this so it faces downwards. Right, so let's do our rectangle here. So we're going to go to our rectangle tool. And again, we can click and drag. Let's change the fill. Remove the fill. Let's make the border this color. Again, if you don't have it, click on the color picker and you can select the color here and OK. And again, we need to make the border bigger. Bigger border. Something like that, yes. And then always go back to the Move tool. Now make sure that your layer is selected. Always make sure. And then you go to Edit, Free Transform, hold down the Alter Option key and resize your frame. Okay, now for the fun part. Let's go back to the Move tool as usual, and we're going to do this brush again. Now remember, for brushes, you always need to create a new layer. So we go back to the new layer icon, layer 7 for a brush. And we go back to our brush tool. And if we go back to our brush panel, which is here, or window brushes is where panels live. And the last setting will still be selected. And if you want, you can make your brush a bit bigger using the square bracket. And now go for it. Click and drag and start creating this gorgeous little brush setting. Obviously, you're not going to get it exactly the same, but you can do your best. Or you can do it completely different and be super creative. Alrighty, now we're going to place an image inside this brush. So we can really use any object as a clipping mask. We can use brushes, we can use shapes, and even text, which we'll look at later. So now we're going to go File, Place, Embedded, and choose our winter cabin, click on Place, and let's make this much bigger. Okay. And the same drill, you hold down the Alt or Option key and you click until you see the square and the arrow. And beautiful, isn't it? You can go back to the Move tool and resize it. Okay, let's do the text now. So for the text, same drill. You go to the Type tool, you create a text frame, and luckily the text formatting will be the same as before. So all we have to do is type our text in, winter, and make it white, highlight it, click on white, and let's go back to the Move tool to deselect it. Now let's go back to the Type tool and click and drag a text frame, and again create a new text frame and type cabin holiday. Then we go back to the Move tool. If you wanted to move your text, you can just click and drag, but make sure you're on the Move tool. And for the final touch, it's the rectangles. So we go to the Rectangle tool, we select the black color, and whoops. Make sure when you do this that you deselect everything. Click on the artboard, and then you can click and drag and create your rectangle, which I think it's a bit off, but that's fine. This might be a little bit hard to tell, but that's fine because we can resize it later, no problem. Something like this. Now let's go back to the Move tool, always. And obviously we need to move our shapes so that they're underneath our texts. So I would like us to click and drag, move it down, click and drag, move it down. And that's interesting, my text disappeared. So let's have a look what went wrong for me here. So if I go to the Type tool and I click here, oh, so my text frame wasn't big enough. So I can click and drag, make it big enough. And I can go back to the Move tool to move it. Now, if I'm not happy with my rectangle, if this one needs to be smaller and this one needs to be wider, what I can do is select the rectangle. And my trick to looking at which rectangle is selected is this eye here. The eye is for visibility. So if this is on, I can see the rectangle. If this is off, can't see it. So I know that this layer is this rectangle. That's my little trick. And now remember our free transform resizing tool? Same here, edit, free transform. And same thing. Now if you hold down the Shift key whilst you do it, you can manipulate it better. Great. Now let's do the same for the other rectangle. So again, you can click on the eye. Oh yes, that is the correct rectangle I want. And then go back to edit, free transform, and hold down the Shift key and you can resize it. Go back to the Move tool. Great. Now, well done for creating this. So what I'm going to show you now, which isn't in these existing graphics, is how to create a clipping mask with text. To do this, we're going to create a new artboard. And I would like you to zoom out, Command or Control minus. And so far, this is what we've created. Very nice. So I would like you to finish off these two, recreate these, and practice your newly acquired skills. And what we'll do together now is we're going to create a new artboard. And I'll show you how to do that. So first, let's close all our artboards. So the arrow faces to the right. And let's go to the Move tool and select this artboard because we're going to add an artboard over here. Now to add an additional artboard, you can right click over here and go to the artboard tool. And at the top, you'll see the sizes. Now this is the size we're currently using, but if you wanted to maybe post it for social media, like maybe Instagram, you would have to have a square proportion. Just make sure that these two are equal. So the width would be 3000 and the height will be 3000. And then you would have a square. So you can type whatever format you want here. And then you can click on the plus. And if you click and drag, it will create another artboard. If you wanted to create another one, you can click on the red plus. And another one, you can click again. And let's undo a couple of times. If you wanted to create another artboard but resize it, you could. But anyway, let's undo that because we don't need that for today. We can just have those two. Let's zoom in. Now to create a clipping mask for text, you need to go to the type tool and create a text frame. Now make sure artboard 9 is selected because that's the one we'll be working on now. Click and drag. And for text as a clipping mask, just make sure that your text is pretty big. You want to go here and make it pretty big. Otherwise, you won't be able to see it. You can call it winter. You can type whatever you want. And clearly my font is white here, so I can highlight it and make it black, let's say. And I can make it even bigger if I wanted to. Okay. Now let's go back to the Move tool. Now if I wanted to place an image in this, I would have to go File, Place Embedded, just like before. Select, let's say, winter cabin, place it, move it, and again, the same drill, Alt and click. And how beautiful is that? Very nice. Okay, so what I'll show you now is how to save individual artboards as JPEGs or PDFs or any format that you want. So say I'm really happy with this one and I want to save this as a separate JPEG. What I can do is select artboard 8, click on artboard 8, and then I can go to File, Export, Artboards to Files. And make sure you tick Export Selected Artboards. That means that it will only select and export artboard 8, which is what we want. And you click on Browse and you save it wherever you want. I'll save it here in that folder. And then you can choose, do you want to save it as a JPEG, as a Photoshop file, as a PDF? Totally up to you. I'm going to choose JPEG and click on Run. And let Photoshop do its thing. Minimize Photoshop and let's have a look. And there is my gorgeous JPEG graphic. Great, so now that you've learned all these skills, what I would like you to do is use one of the artboards we've just created, and I want you to get super creative. I want you to use all the tools you've learned, create shapes and clipping masks and loads of brushes and text, and create a beautiful graphic. And I would like you to post it in the projects section. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with and the beautiful graphics you will create, which you can then use for social media. It was a pleasure to teach you, and I'll see you soon.